is all set. Looks good. Hopefully this catches up. Alright, looks good. Let's get into the hand reviews and then we'll jump into the next section here. Ended up playing pretty good yesterday. Actually went really far in a progressive knockout. And hit a 3-outer. Ace-King versus Ace-Queen. No good. But, what can you do? Wow, that really made a lot of noise. Sorry about that. Alright. Ace-Queen. Believe this is, this is early in one of the tournaments. These first few are going to be tournaments. Make it 2.5, get 3-bet. Do go ahead and call. It's fairly early. We're all really deep. This player's doubled up early. He goes ahead and leads at this for 1/3 pot. I don't really buy it just yet. Plus I have gut shots over cards, things like that. Call, Jack comes off, he checks. I decide to jump right on it. And this is one of those ones where I'm using a mistake that I see other players doing. So other players, if they had something like King Jack or something like that here, hitting the Jack on the turn, pulling them ahead, players at lower levels tend to overprotect their hands. So on this card, when this comes out, if you had the Jack, you would most likely want to be betting medium to small. So you'd want to be betting around 14 or less blinds, probably around 12. Because the idea is your opponent pretty much has nothing. The only thing they can have is a flush draw, really, in this scenario, where they've 3-bet pre-flop and then, they've checked the turn because they're obviously worried about the Jack. I mean, yeah, they can have overpairs, queens, kings, and aces. That's very true, but it's kind of unlikely when they check the turn. Because most people would continue betting small, and then if you raised, they would figure it out or whatever. But now I see players overprotect the Jack here, because if you have the Jack in this scenario, you pretty much have the nuts. Like, unless this player has exactly Jack 10 or pocket 10s or 6s, which you got to think about, would he 3-bet with that pre-flop? You're pretty much nutted with the Jack here. So a mistake that players make is to overprotect their hands. So that's what I decided to make this look like I was doing, was overprotecting the Jack. It's better to look like the more common, the more common thing that somebody's going to see if you're attempting to bluff. So I go ahead and make the bet and take it right down. Now, that's a lot of thinking going into this simple bet, but it makes the case for why you size it this way. Because if I felt like if I bet, 22 or something like that, it would just look too much like I was trying to represent the Jack. What I was trying to do was find the bet that looked like I had the Jack, wanted to protect it, but also wanted to get called. So that was the general thing I was trying to do. And I just think it's an interesting setup that you'll see quite a bit. Let's go ahead and get to the next one. Ace 10 on the button. We see a raise. Again, we're pretty early in the tournament. There's a call. I decided to 3-bet it. I've been 3-betting from the button more often. It seems like a pretty obvious thing, but this is not. For me, an obvious 3-bet here is King Queen or King Jack suited or things like that. The ace is kind of one that I've always kind of shied away from, but I feel like I'm getting more comfortable with it now. So I make the 3-bet, and it folds back to this player. He calls. This player's range should really only be pairs. So basically, we're just trying to avoid a set on the flop. I make the ace. It should be good. I decide to check back to trap. 7 on the turn. Unless this guy has exactly 4s, I'm really not worried about anything. He checks. I decide to bet for value now. You'd be surprised how often you get called by a pair of 10s or 9s here. Even 8s, honestly, can call you. He does fold. It's obviously the best play. He could have had something, as simple as, a suited king or something, but I really feel like it was a pair that I just couldn't get any value from. But because of the 3-bet pre-flop, I was able to more strongly determine my position. Like, if I just call and then this guy c-bets, it's like, now where am I with the ace? It's better to 3-bet, and if I get 4-bet, I can fold. Cool. But if he calls, then I have to worry about it. But being in position, a lot of players don't play shitty aces like that. So pretty good. Aces in the 6 max. This was a tournament that did not go well for me. I couldn't get anything going. Raise, get called. I'm pretty short. I'm just trying to get the money in. Oh, this one's in here because uh, I have it in a video and I marked it, but this is unbelievable to me. This is unbelievable to me. So it comes off ace-6-6, right? There's nothing really for my opponent to have here. So I just check. He bets one big blind, okay? Obviously, this doesn't mean anything, so we just call. I'm going to check the turn. I expect to see another bet. He checks. On the river, I make quads. And it's like, what the fuck can I bet? So I have to check to him to allow him to bluff. I check. This maniac checks back. He had trips on the flop. He called me pre-flop in position with 6-7 offsuit, flopped his best possible hand, and bet one big blind. I don't know why he wasn't betting the turn. Like, if I just have two clubs, you're just going to let me get there? I mean, I think in this specific instance, everything was done so wrong that if I had bet the river, I think I would have gotten called. But this is just a really weird hand that I can't explain. So, I just wanted to show it, I guess. It's going to be in a highlight reel. Player limps from the small blind. I decided to go ahead and call or check with the 4-6. Make a 6, pretty good. Player bet, and he bet instantly when this happens. So, of course, I'm calling it. Shouldn't have an ace very often. Ace on the turn kind of supports that fact. Now there's less aces for him to have. And he bets 3/4 pot. On what planet are you betting an ace this way? Are you trying to make me fold if you have an ace? I don't think so, bro. I call, river comes off a 3. And now this player bets 80% pot. Again, what? Like, I definitely have a bluff catcher, right? I think the only hand that plays this way that beats me properly is a better 2-pair, like something like aces and 8s in his hand or something like that, you know, where the aces, you know, don't matter, so his 8s are pretty good. But I really didn't feel like that was the case because there was no raise pre-flop, and even bad players will raise that. And this guy didn't have that many blinds. He only had, at the start of the hand, like 30 blinds. So he'd kind of want to be raising pre-flop. So when it comes down to the river and he makes this big bet, I pretty much snap called this, saying this just looks like garbage. And it was. He had a gut shot, and he decided to kind of play it for all it was worth and just gave me just all the chips. It was pretty fun way to play the hand. Aces again. Why are these hands in my review? Usually I don't get reviews for aces. I decide to go ahead and 3-bet small. I get called. Cold called, by the way. I decide to bet 1/3 pot. I'm basically playing the pot as jokers because this player doesn't have much, so if he has anything, it's going to go in right now. Of course, he does jam. We call. And pocket 9s. So this player cold called a 3-bet. And then, when facing a bet, just jammed over the top with a reasonable pair. My feeling here is this is common, and it's not too bad. But on the flop here, when I bet small, if you call, you have 15 blinds left, and there's going to be 30 in the pot, right? What's the purpose of jamming here? Because if you jam all in, it costs me 15 big blinds to call to win 47. So I'm getting 3-1. So I'm not folding any kind of value hand. And you take the play away from yourself. So I think this is one, if I was my opponent here, granted, I never would have called this pre-flop. I probably would have jammed or folded. Just because it's not a great play with 27 blinds with pocket 9s this stage of the tournament. You might just want to give it up. You saw a raise from early and a 3-bet from early position. You might just want to give it up the 9s on the button. Honestly, I think you do. But for this exact purpose, people can have big pairs. So when I bet standard, if he had just called here, right, and then the turn comes off a heart, I might be inclined to check here with 28 blinds and my opponent having 15. Now, granted, if he jams straight away, I'm probably going to call because nobody's doing that with a flush. But when the river comes off and it pairs the board, I'm probably going to check and call, but this is your best moment to jam. Because now there's just so much stuff that beats one pair, you know, flushes. You know, there are some, you know, 5s that are out there. There are some, you know, like the suited ace 5s. There are some sets that are out there: tens, threes, eights, tens and eights usually most commonly. So there's so much stuff that can beat me by the river here that I'm never folding. But I think if I had a hand like pocket jacks, I might consider it, just because it gives you your best option. And plus, if the guy has ace king, you're granted on that flop you're going to win, but you're probably still going to get called. Then you're just in a race. You like it, you're going to win 70% of the time, but at the same time, I think there was more play left over here that my opponent missed. So if you're going to play the hand wrong, you might as well play it right after you do that, Folds to me, I raise to 2.5 with the ace king, get called in the small blind, called in the big blind. Flop comes off, player leads out for 3 big blinds. This was very confusing to me. I really couldn't figure out what was going on here. I figured this mostly would be a 10. But with backdoor spade draws and the other player calling, it cost me 3 big blinds to win 17 and a half. So I definitely go ahead and take the call. I can pick up a lot of equity. I make the king on the turn, which is great. But I'm still, have to proceed cautiously because the player's still betting. That's the funny part. Like, usually if a player has a 10 here, they may check the turn because they've been called twice. This player folds. I'm going to go ahead and continue calling. The river comes off a deuce. My opponent bets the same bet he made on the turn, very small. I mean, can he have a 7 here sometimes? I mean, I guess. But it doesn't look like it. So I was so confused by this because I feel like this play is so out of line. And you can see versus the deck, I'm 90%. So I just called it. I mean, there was really no reason. If he had checked, I think I would have bet. And I would have bet fairly large. I would have bet like 20 blinds. But he had aces. So I really don't know what this is. You're just pounding your chips into a player that could most likely beat you. I'll bet you if I had jammed the river, I could have gotten the fold. Because this player would be really terrified of me having pocket 10s or a 7 or somehow. I think this is a player who just underplayed his hand. I mean, on this turn, if he just bets, like you would just bet crazy here because the only real worry for a 7 is the small blind, and you're going to pay that off anyway. So why not just bet like 15 here, right? So that in the instances when I have a king and he bets 15, I'm probably getting it in because it just looks like bullshit, right? But this bet's very easy to call, and he bet 15 by the river, I guess. But yeah, so very interesting hand. Good thing to be aware of how some people make mistakes. He just called it from the small. Like, I don't hate just calling it from the small, but I would think he'd want to reopen the betting. And if he had reopened the betting, we would have played for a big pot. This is one where, yeah, I was in late position, so I could be raising wide. But if that's the case, why are you leading on the turn? It's really hilarious. Ace queen on the button. We see a raise to 4.5. This player, this is the exact example as to why you don't change your bet size. This is the bounty tournament. This player was targeting bounties by taking mid-marginal hands and raising them way big pre-flop to get players like this and me out of the pot. So my correction was that when I have a good hand, I really shouldn't fold it. I shouldn't be worried about this because I'm going to have him dominated so much. That being the case, I don't want to 3-bet because when one of these players does go all in, he's going to go all in over the top with substandard hands. He did this a few times. So I just called it, and the big blind did go all in. This player calls. I decide to just go ahead and call because I know he's not folding. Now, granted, I have a third of my chips in here, but at the same time, I feel like I'm so statistically ahead of this guy's range that this is a hugely profitable call. This is one of those ones where it's just about the long term. I feel like I have to compensate in some way. If I jam now, he's not folding. That's the absolute truth. Doesn't matter what he has. I flop the flush draw. I decide to just check back. There's really no reason to bet. I should be ahead anyway, unless he makes some weird pair. Make the nut flush on the turn. I decide to go ahead and bet 1/4 pot. I'm basically just saying, look, if you don't have anything, you're going to go away anyway. He does fold, and the ace king loses to my ace queen, and I made a nice bounty. But this was the thing. This player, I had seen it so many times that I think this is the proper way to play this hand. Not just because of the result. I could have won this pot on the turn on a lot of boards. And I believe if a queen had come off, I think I could have gotten the full double. Because this guy's playing king, queen, queen, jack, queen 10 in this manner. I really feel like that's where my strength was. So just an interesting correction that I made because of what he was doing. Let's see here. Short-handed. I defend, I make a 5. Goes check, check, check. 8 on the turn. I decide to go ahead and bet. This is a protection bet, and it's also value. We see one call. River comes off, and I decide to bet again. Don't really feel like I'm beat by anything. I feel like it's just a draw most of the time, and it works. And this is one where basically I'm playing this 5 like it's a 10. And this is the thing you have to remember. If nobody has a 10, the 8's pretty good on the flop. If nobody has an 8, the 5's pretty good on the flop. So why not just bet it? You can actually disregard these cards if nobody's likely got a pair. And when the flop checks through, nobody's likely got a pair. So just go ahead and bet it. And then, an 8 on the turn is supposed to scare me? I mean, yeah, somebody could have checked an 8, I guess. But this player, opened. This player called it. Wouldn't they have bet an 8? Like, it doesn't make sense. The only thing I was really worried about was the random queen. But that's why I bet the turn. So the suited queen gets there, but nah. 10-9 suited. Great hand here. Love 10-9 suited. I got 100 blinds. This is that bounty tournament again. I decided to go ahead and call. Make 2 pair. Interesting hand here. So I decided to check. It's a super draw-heavy board. This player was a little wild with the draws. It's a little back history to know. Goes check, check. Or goes check to this player. He c-bets 1/4 pot. Fairly standard. Folds there. My dude calls it. I decide to go for the check raise, obviously. I just don't want anything really weak to hang around. And this player does jam, and I want the betting to be reopened. So, or if he does jam, I want the betting to be reopened, so this player has to think twice about it. He just calls, and now this guy goes all in for 80 big blinds. I have 87 blinds. It's going to cost me 70 to call. And I said in game, I most likely have the best hand here, but I absolutely can't call. There's way too many draws out here. Even versus a 7, this sucks because it means a third of the time I'm going to lose. There's flush draws out here. It's whatever. So I just went ahead and folded it. And player calls, and you can see the hands. Open ender, an overcard, and the straight draw. And then this guy's got the open-ended straight draw on the top end. So you can see, 57%, 43%. If we go back just a little, I'm 36% here. And this player is actually favored with 47%. So this fold it's one of those ones where it sucks, but you have to realize that even though you have the best hand, you should just give it up. And I said at the time, I'm like, I'll get him later. No big deal. And it ended up running out, and the 7 did make the straight, and he took the guy out. So you can be dead right and dead wrong. It's like having the right of way when you're a pedestrian. I used to always hear this when I was a kid from cops who would hang around the pool hall. They would say, you can be dead right, and which means you have the right of way, but you got hit by a fucking car. So avoid the fucking traffic here and just get out of the way. And yeah, it was a huge pot, whatever. But at the same time, I'm still in great position in this tournament. Now, a few 5 minutes later. So I have queen jack. I decide to, this player decides to raise out of second position. I do call it. I think this is perfect in position. And it's just us. And this is the guy who jammed the king 7. Don't forget. I flop a gut shot, backdoor straight, or backdoor flush draw. Player bets 3 big blinds. My equity is 50-50. We're going to go ahead and call, obviously. Pick up the spade draw. Pretty cool, pretty cool. If I hit either one of my hands, I'm definitely going to get paid. Player decides to go ahead and bet pretty big now. I'm still 50-50, though. And my feeling is that a spade or a 9 is absolutely good for me. Right? I'm not worried about higher spades. So I'm really not even worried about diamonds. because I feel like this player has something. When this flop hit, I said, this is in this dude's wheelhouse. He can definitely have tens here. He can definitely have two pair combos, sets. This is definitely in this player's wheelhouse because of the way he was playing and how many hands he was playing in this bounty tournament. So I called it. And there's the perfect card that ever was. Make the straight. The opponent checks back. I decide to go for the big value bet, 25 big blinds. He snap called it and rolled over the old two pair 8-10. I pretty much said he could have two pairs a lot here, so I like the big bet. And you can see just by waiting, it was even a blind level later, so this hand was huge. Race Call Jin, I actually like your line better since he covers you. Yeah. Didn't realize it was a bounty. Yeah. It's a bounty tournament. That's the thing you got to remember. This was a huge deal. They weren't huge bounties, but like players in bounty tournaments do things improperly. What's up, Mozzie? So this is a great hand, and picked up a huge pot, and this ended up setting my friend here on a straight trip to the door. He tilted like a fucking motherfucker, and I got the most of these chips. I wanted to see a raise on turn as a bluff. Yeah, that's the thing though. Normally, yes, on this turn, this is a great spot to he bets. But here's the thing though, he's betting here so heavy, and because it's a bounty tournament, I felt like he had something good that he wasn't folding. So raising here on this turn isn't great. And plus, I'm trying to get all the money. And here's the thing, man. With two pair, like, I think it's only because I could have a 7 sometimes with 8-7 or something like that. I think that's the only reason why he thought about it and checked. And I maybe could have gotten bigger, but I wanted to bet really fast. So this bet is, I think, good. Right, yeah, because it's a big bet. That's the thing. And, when somebody bets that big on the turn, it's not air. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he's not folding. So we might get it in on a draw versus a draw, which is not what I want. If I have a draw in position, calling this one here and then the draw misses, like if he does have diamonds, I can bluff like a motherfucker here, right? So you kind of leave play behind, So interesting dynamic. I love that hand, and it just took a little bit of patience, and I stuck this guy for a chunk. So it was funny. I remember I looked at it. The previous hand, let me see where it is. Where is it? The 10-9. This is funny. So this is the 10-9, right, that I check folded. And this hand was 2 minutes later, the queen high straight. I lost 340,000 in chips on the 10-9 where I check raised the top two pair and he jammed and I folded to the draw, right? 2 minutes later, I made the queen high straight against him and got 1.1 million. So that's the point, is that it took patience, but knowing what you're up against, it paid off huge. Really liked the line. Thanks, man. Yeah, I thought it was very well thought out at the time. Super well thought out. I did say at the time, I'm not really sure what I do if a queen or a jack hits, but I think his betting would have told me that I was no good. See a raise and a 3-bet here. This is a cash game, by the way. This is Zoom poker or Blitz poker. I decided just to call with the ace-king because what's the point of 4-betting here? You know what I'm saying? I'm out of position to the button. The button should have a wide range. This small blind only raised to 6, so he's not really defining his hand too much. We go to the pot 3 ways. Jack comes off. I keep my range wide, too, by just calling, right? Player bets right about a little under a third pot. I decide to just float it and call. Button gets out of the way. Now we have position on the pre-flop raiser, who really shouldn't have much. He checks. We bet the turn for value. This is what I would do with a jack. And the player folds. This is one of those ones where, because of the button being there, I didn't like the 4-bet. I've been finding from the blinds in Blitz poker, I'm getting a lot of great results by just playing the ace-king. If it's been 3-bet, just not 4-betting it, like from the small blind or the big blind. Now, if it's been raised, obviously it's a great spot to overbet squeeze because people don't give you as much credit as you need. But when you just call this hand, you can have the deck. Like this player raised, I can have hands as bad as 10 Jack here that just have him nutted, right? So let's see here. Pocket sixes. Oh, this is a fun one. I think this is in here because it's in a video and I wanted to tag it. So, oh, this is why it's in here. This player raises to 15. And this is one where I wanted to do the math and show. This is what we've been doing in the Tournament Masterclass. So there's 15 in the middle, right? Plus this 7.5. Plus it'll be my 15. So 15, 30, 35 and a half. So it's going to cost me, or it's going to be 35.5 divided by, what is that, 12 and a half? So I'm already getting 2.84 to 1 on the call, and I definitely have more than 125 blinds behind. Player only has 100, but there are other players in the pot. So in this instance, I'm getting the correct pot odds to call. I don't think anybody really doubted this, but somebody did mention that it was a big call pre-flop. And I said, well, by the math, it works out almost perfectly. By actual chips, it only is like 9.8 to 1 because of this player. But because of the dead money and because other players could come in the pot and do something crazy, if I flop a set, I'm getting probably like 20 to 1 because we could actually play for all these chips and somebody else's. So I decided to go ahead and call it. So does the small blind. Flop comes off with that 6 on it, and you're not going to believe this, but this player just jams 60 blinds into it. Now, it's not an unreasonable bet for somebody to make because there's 47 in the pot. What's he going to do? Check raise and get the last like 12 or 13 in? Like, it's going to look too strong. So jamming is good. I'm expecting this player to have pocket 8s or pocket 5s a lot. Yeah, they can have 7s sometimes, but I'm not worried about that. This is really the best part of it, though. This player just calls, and with the big bet pre-flop and the just call, I said this guy can have aces all day. So I just jammed it in, and this is where the player didn't understand what was going on. If you're going to do this, if you're going to play this hand, because after he made this call and I jammed in, he thought about it for a really long time, like a really long time. And I think he knew he was fucked, but he absolutely couldn't fold. He learned in game that he had to call 40 blinds to win, what is this, like 180 plus the middle 230. So there's just no way to fold, right? So if you're not just going to fold the pocket aces or kings straight away, just jam the chips in. And he should have jammed the chips in because the only thing I can have behind that can call him is a hand like a set. So he did eventually call, and interestingly, the gut shot jammed, which is fucking hilarious. I don't know. I guess he was trying to represent an overpair after just calling a raise and a 3-bet pre-flop in a multi-way pot. Okay. And our friend here had pocket kings. So it was a nice big pot, and it just shows, you know, I had to call 12 big blinds additional to win 300. So I think I got my 10 to 1. I don't know. So it's a nice pot, and it's in a video, and that's really why it's there. But it just shows that, you know, poker's not dead. So let's see here. Let me close this. I'm going to go ahead and mute this. Let me turn the sound on here. And we're starting the last section of the pre-flop section in the Tournament Masterclass. It's not as long as the other ones. It's a great section, though, and it shows that there is a lot of play when you have 12 big blinds left. It's not just a jam fest. There are times when you're raising and 3-betting. So here we go. 12 big blinds. When you have fewer than 12 big blinds, let's get it on.
Let's discuss when you have fewer than 12 big blinds. You are in the danger zone, and we have to make something happen. So let's first discuss when you are folded to. And this is nice and easy. You should follow the Push Fold app that we have available for you. You can get it at jonathanlittlepoker.com/app for your computer, or you can download it. You can download the Poker Coaching app in the iTunes or Android App Store and use the Push Fold feature.
It's free.
So you should be following this chart pretty much when everyone folds to you in all positions besides exactly in the small blind. We'll discuss how to play small blind strategy and the big blind strategy in just a second. However, you should usually adjust your range a little bit based on your opponent's tendencies. Again, These charts are all going to be implementable game theory optimal charts. But if your opponents are going to call your all in too infrequently, you should actually shove with a slightly wider range. So I'll show you how to do that. Whenever you do go to the app, you will see something like this. We may change the look or design of it, but
it looks much
it's going
different
to generally
now.
be the same. Let me show you how to use it. So here we have 3 buttons at the top: next, steal, and undo. Next is going to move you to the next hand as if you have folded. Steal means that you went all in, everyone folded, and then your chip stack increases by about 2 big blinds. I realize sometimes it may increase by 2.5 big blinds, may increase by 1.5 if there's no ante, but the way the app works is it adds 2 big blinds to your stack.
It literally follows you around the table. So I'll bring this up just when I'm like in a waiting room somewhere, like a doctor's office or something, and just be sitting there like going through it and going, okay, well, my next hand I'm going to have this. So I think I'm supposed to jam that. And then I'll look at the thing and it'll go jam. All right, cool. And then I'll say I stole it. And then go to the next. And then it moves your position and it ups your chip stack. And it compensates. So then I try to imagine what's the next hand. And I've done it at times where I've had an app going on my phone of this, and then another app saying generating random cards. So it's like, okay, with that hand in the cutoff, next hand, after I stole, I have 14 big blinds. What's my move? And then I'm like, okay, well, fold. And then I'll go to the next one, see that it's a fold or a raise or whatever. And if I got it wrong, I'll just go ahead and, move on like it was I acted correctly. But it's a great way to like kind of drill yourself, and it's very encapsulated. And once you get the rhythm down, you can bang through hundreds of these in like an hour.
And then undo goes back. It goes back 1 hand. So let's take a look at this. This is a situation where 6 big blinds on the button with a big blind ante. This is the traditional ante we've been assuming you're playing with the entire time throughout this masterclass. In this scenario, when everyone folds to you on the button, you can jam with 51.7% of hands, which is all of these, or graphically represented, here they all are. So when you're playing, you can have this open before the hand is dealt in live poker, or if you're playing online, you can just have it up on your computer, and you can be referencing this. You can take a look at this and make your decision.
To be clear, if you're playing online, you cannot use this during a hand. After you act on the previous hand, you can then look at the app and see, oh, next hand, if I get something in this range, I can jam. The only way to legally do that is then before the next hand is dealt, turn it over and don't have it in your vision. Then you've referenced it very close, but you have to remember, if you're looking at it at the time and you sit there and you're like, oh, I have this hand, okay, that's a fold, that's a whatever, you are now cheating. This is now against terms of service for pretty much every poker room. You cannot do this. So be aware. It's good in live poker, though. In between hands gives you something to do.
When you are playing live, you may not be able to have it like actually open at the seat in front of you, but you can look at this before the hand and know if everyone folds to me, I'm going to go all in with these hands. The way you can memorize it is to say I'm going to go all in with Queen 2 suited, Jack 5 suited, 6 5 suited, and then King 2, Queen 6, and 10 8. And if you remember those few data points, you know everything better than Queen 2 suited you're shoving, right? So that's all of these. Everything better than King 2 you're shoving, that's all of these. Basically just go down and you list the few lowest points, and that will allow you to easily memorize that. So okay, say we're playing and we go all in. We steal the pot and everybody folds. We click steal and take a look at what just happens. We went up 8 to 8 big blinds because we won the small blind big blind ante, and it moved us over a position. Now we're in the cutoff. If everyone folds to us in the cutoff, we should go all in with this strategy. Let's say we do not steal. Someone raises and we fold our hand. We click next. Moves us to the hijack seat. Let's say we fold again. Moves us to the low jack seat. Great. Now let's say we pick up Jack 8 suited. Everyone folds to us. We go all in. Everybody folds. We win the pot. We steal. Now we go up to 10 big blinds, right? And it just keeps moving us around. And you can keep going around, going around, going around. When we are under the gun, next hand, we're going to be in the big blind. Okay, I'll talk about that in just a second. We have no shoving range here because it's not possible to open shove in the big blind because if everyone folds to you, you just win the pot, right? And if someone raises or limps or anything like that, these charts do not apply. These charts only apply to exactly when everyone folds to you. That's very important. Okay, we click next. Now we're in the small blind. If If everyone folds to us in the small blind
up, pocket?
with 9 big blinds, we should go all in with this range. Again, from the small blind, I'm going to give you a little bit slightly better charts when we're playing with roughly this stack depth. But if we wanted to follow these charts, you'd be fine. Next, from the button, you see we lose a big blind because we lost the small blind, big blind, and ante. And now we use this strategy again. Nice and easy. Using this chart, following this chart is going to be very, very strong and make you very difficult to take advantage of. If you wanted to adjust anything down here, let's say you wanted to have more big blinds, right? You can use this for more big blinds. I really only suggest using this chart when you have 12 big blinds or less, because when you have more than 12 big blinds, your options are not only all in or fold. Your options are min raise, all in, or fold. So please don't use this when you have more than 12 big blinds. Here's the adjustments. You can be a little bit looser. Let's say you want to be a little bit looser or a little bit tighter. This can adjust your strategy to let you know if you want to be like a lot tighter. Let's say you know all the players in the blinds are very tight and you're on the button and you want to jam a little bit more. The question is, how much more do you want to jam? You know, some, like a little bit. There you go, we've adjusted. So you want to jam a little bit more. There you go, we've adjusted further. You can also select the number of seats at the table. You can select the type of ante. You can have, I'll show you right here. You can have normal antes where every person puts in, let's say 12.5% of the big blind. They still do this online. Some places still do this live. But usually most casinos are now using a big blind ante. Or if there are no antes, you can select no antes. Just to show you, by the way, take a look at this. 8 big blinds on the button. With a big blind ante, we shove 47% of hands. With no ante, we shove 35% of hands. So that ante, either being in play or not being in play, is highly relevant. So make sure you definitely select the correct ante structure. So that's it. When everyone folds to you in every position besides the small blind, when you have 12 big blinds or less, just follow these charts. You will be perfectly fine and you will be way better than your opponents. Realize though, these charts do not apply when someone limps in front of you, when someone raises in front of you, when there are payout implications. If you are already at the final table or if you're on the bubble of a tournament, these do not apply. We'll be discussing that later. But if there are no payout implications, follow these charts when you have 12 big blinds or fewer and you're going to be perfectly fine.
This tool is completely free on his site. You can also find it in the App Store for iTunes. I don't know about Android. Go back and look 5 minutes ago at where he said to get it. It's a really great tool, and it's a lot of fun. Let's see here. Let's start the thing here. You're in the low jack with 10 big blinds with ace jack or with ace deuce offsuit. What should you do? Well, we're going to look it up. 10 big blinds is kind of a lot, but we're going to see here. So we're going to go to the tools, preflop charts. This is not the app. This is something different. Blinds, 10 big blinds. Our position is the low jack. Action, raise first in, ace deuce. Did it say suited? Offsuit. It's a fold. Yep, it's a fold. It was too many blinds to jam. Not profitable shove. Hijack, 8 big blinds, jack 8 suited. Ooh, that's a closey. I think that's on the line. What do we got? Hijack, 8 big blinds. We're going to call it 10, jack 8 suited. I think it's a fold. It seems like it's on the line. I don't have an 8 big blind here for it, so I'm going to go with fold. Nope, profitable shove. Okay, so at 10 big blinds, no good. 8 big blinds, good. Under the gun, 6 big blinds, king 6 suited. Well, that's, well, I mean, I'm going to call it a fold. Yeah, because there's too many players behind. Button with 9 big blinds, 6 7 suited. There's an argument here for calling, but we're not discussing that right now. So 9 big blinds, 6 7 suited on the button. Let's see here. Yep, it's an all-in. I don't really like that move very much, but I realize that there are times when I'm just missing out. Straight jamming from the button is great, but it, you know, it also, this is one that's highly dependent on the players in the blinds. You know, if they overcall too much, you're obviously not going to take this move because you're basically just trying to get the fold. I got toothpaste in my mustache. Let's see here. We're going to mark this as complete. We'll see how long the next section is.
Now let's discuss when you have fewer than 12 big blinds and everyone folds to you in one of the blinds. Obviously, if you're in the big blind and everyone folds, You collect the pot and move on to the next hand. But if they fold you in the small blind, you should actually not follow the all-in or fold chart when you have more than something.
This was super intense for me. When I got to this point in the Tournament Masterclass, the first time I went through it, this broke my brain, and I realized my entire small blind strategy had to be revamped. I had already been having these thoughts, and I had a notebook that had like, it's over there somewhere. It had like 5 pages of notes on the small blind at different stack depths of things I was doing wrong. And everybody loses the most from the small blind. That's just the way poker works. You lose your most chips in the small blind. Nobody is profitable from the small blind all the time. But, like, you compare it to the button, you can be very profitable from the button for years if you do things correctly. From the small blind, you just won't. So, when I saw this specific part, I completely changed my small blind play. I actually took 5 days off of poker, and I was playing every day at that point. And I actually took 5 days off and just worked through the sections on the small blind using these crazy multicolor charts that he has. This one's only 2 colors or 3 colors, but there's some of them that have 7 colors on this thing. You limp and then you jam, or you limp and then fold, or you 3-bet and then fold, or you raise and then fold, or you raise and then jam, and raise and then 4-bet, and then it's there's so much shit to it that it took me 5 days, and I was studying about. I was so into it, I was putting in at least 6 hours a day. The first day, I think I did like 12 hours of actual like study at the time, and it looked like the scribblings of a madman, just like through this notebook and like going back and re-listening to parts of this and things that he had said. And I used pieces from the Cash Game Masterclass also to help me, and I really improved my small blind play in 5 days. And since then, it's been a big focus of mine. And honestly, I would say if you want to work on one position more than any other on the game and improve your results, I'm going to go with small blind. Because if you can lose less than your opponents from there, you're going to do so much better than everybody else.
Like 8 big blinds. So between 8 or 12 big blinds, you should just follow the push fold app and just do what it says. But when you have more than 8 big blinds, you should use roughly this strategy. You're going to find that having a limping range allows you to play more hands profitably than if you use an all-in or fold strategy. So as we see here, we're playing from the small blind, we're playing 80% of hands profitably with 10 big blinds. Let's go over here, select 10 big blinds in the small blind. And you see here, if you use an all-in or fold strategy, you only get to play 71.9% of hands profitably. You may say 72 to 80, is that big of a deal? And the answer is actually yes. That is a large increase in hands you get to profitably play. So here is the implementable game theory optimal strategy for when you have a 10 big blind stack. You should limp 7s and better. You should limp all these other reasonably strong suited hands, limp all these marginal junk hands, and then still go all in with, remember, all the hands that are kind of in the middle. Turns out whenever you're playing blind versus blind, the actual strength of these kind of like high equity hands goes way down because you're against only one other opponent. So this is what you should do. And in turn, this is what the big blind should do. By the way, if you're in the big blind and the small blind limps, you probably want to raise to 3 big blinds. You may find that if that player limps and they call your 3 big blind raise every single time, well, then you should adjust and raise a little bit bigger. If they're going to fold to a 2.5 big blind raise, you should be raising smaller. So remember, always adjust to take advantage of what you're...
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on, buddy.
What's up? Oh, you're just getting through? Okay. So we'll go in like 25, 30 minutes?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Your opponents do incorrectly. By the way, if everyone folds to you in the small blind, and the big blind will just fold everything besides, like, I don't know, 6s or better, and ace, 10 and better, and like king, queen, if you go all in, then obviously you should just go all in with every hand because that's going to be very, very profitable. Okay. Assuming we are using the implementable game theory optimal strategy, and we know the small blind's doing that, from the big blind, here's what we should do. We should go all in with all of these hands in blue. We should raise small with this very polarized range of the absolute best hands that are going to call an all-in, and then a few very marginal bluffs. And then we should check all these hands in white. And essentially what you're doing here is you're jamming the high equity hands that play poorly post flop, right? Plus some various bluffs that have very little equity.
So the correction here for implementable strategy is to like get rid of little things like outliers, like king 8 suited. You don't need to jam the king 8 suited. You can just check it. I mean, you can see above and below and around are all, checks. It's because of this dynamic of the raise with ace-7 suited and greater that is going to call off that it affected this number. This is one you can drop. Remember, these all-ins are bluffs. The ace-deuce suited, the king-3, the king-deuce, the ace-queen off, and stuff like that. These are down to about ace-8 and ace-7. Those are the all-in for their value. Beyond that, you're kind of getting into the bluffs. I would drop the ace-6 and just check it if I was limped on, and jamming the ace-5 and lower, because the ace-6 is just the worst one in the deck. And then, there's these little bluffs down here. You can give up some of these, but you're using these as bluffs anyway, so you might as well just use them all. You can drop the queen 8 if you want and just check it. Like, you have to look for the implementable strategy, the thing in-game where it's so on the line that, like, this could be, by the solver, this king 8 suited could be just like 52% the best move is all in. You could just let it go. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so, you can make adjustments on it like that. And the raise, the small raise he's talking about, is 3 big blinds. Player limps the small, you make it 3 big blinds. Then you get to react to what they do.
And then you are raising small with the absolute nuts for value, plus a few junky hands, and then you're checking all the hands that flop reasonably well. And I realize this is somewhat confusing because, like, why wouldn't you raise king, queen suited and king, jack suited? Those are good, right? They are, but checking those will protect your checking range, and it turns out the suited hands much prefer just checking and seeing a flop in this instance. All right, 10 big blinds versus a small blind all in. Now you just, again, have a straight math problem. If your opponent jams these hands in blue, you can run this in Equilab yourself and see this is accurate. These are the hands that you can profitably call with. So with 10 big blinds, if the small blind goes all in, you should be calling with king 2 offsuit. That is very important to realize. However, I do want to make it clear that if the opponent is using a shove or fold strategy, in turn, your strategy should change. So what your opponent does is very relevant, because notice here, the game theory optimal strategy has the small blind limping with a pile of the best hands, right? Whereas the shove or fold strategy has them, well, going all in or folding with those hands. So if your opponent in the small blind uses this strategy, let's just pull it up. Let's give our opponent this strategy in Equilab. We're going to give them all sorts of stuff, down to 10-2 suited. They have all sorts of garbage. Might take me a second to input. You can watch me do this. You can see, though, it really doesn't take all that much time. Okay, so the opponent's jamming with this. Does that look right? This is 72% of hands, 72% of hands. Okay, so if they're jamming with this, what should we call with? Tool, hand range calculator. What pot odds do we need? So in this scenario, our opponent jams 10 big blinds. We're in the big blind. We have to put in 9 to win 21. So 9 divided by 21 equals 42.3. So let's say we want 44. Calculate hand range. Pull this over here. You see now we get to call off with this range. How are we going to do this? Let's see. Let's get this over here. Let's compare this. And you're going to see that these ranges are actually a little bit different.
It's a little wider.
Sorry, the screen space and stuff here. So in this situation, we are calling off with 45% of hands against the game theory optimal opponent. But now we're calling off with 49% of hands against someone who's using the shove-fold strategy. And that's because the shove-fold strategy in this case, while it does have more of the strong hands, it also has all of the very garbage hands. So the fact that it has all the garbage hands is very, very relevant. All those garbage hands allow us to call with a wider range. So as you see, if you just blindly follow this strategy where you call the small blinds all in, let's call it optimally, you're going to end up making mistakes because most people are not following this strategy we have outlined here. You'll actually find a lot of players think that their only options when they get down to 12 big blinds is to go all in or fold in all scenarios. But there are a few corner cases that I'm showing you here, and I want to make sure that you make better plays than your opponents. So make sure you understand that you do still want a small blind limping strategy. That is going to add an immense amount of profit to your overall game. And then from the big blind, make sure you're really adjusting to whatever your opponent does incorrectly. If you don't know, pay attention if they're ever limping. If they're limping sometimes, they may be using something close to what we have outlined here. But you're going to find most people do just use an all-in or fold strategy, which is going to result in you calling off with about 50% of hands. So a little bit wider than we have listed here.
And when the player has 12 big blinds, you got to remember they're jamming usually very tight versus these charts. And when they have like 10 blinds or less, that's people's freak out threshold. Once they fall below 10 big blinds, they just kind of jam any one good card, meaning you can call them with any king or any suited queen 4 plus. And these hands also, the live action cards, where you're 60-40, always good. And remember, you can compensate. If the player in the small blind has 10 big blinds and you're in the big and you have 50 big blinds, you're playing a 10 big blind effective stack. So when they jam, you don't want to play it as if you had 10 blinds, but almost. You're going to play it in a way where you go, okay, well, they're jamming super wide, so I can call super wide. Is it worth this, if you had 40 blinds, is it worth 25% of my stack to call off here? Does that hurt me more than it helps me? And a lot of times the answer is going to be, okay, I'm going to make a fold of a game theory optimal play because it hurts me too much at this stage of the game. If you're, at those points where you're just barely in the cash and, people are doing crazy things, then yes, you want to take the gamble spots. But if you're like on the final table, you don't want to be doing that. If you're like third in chips and going down, to 30 big blinds would knock you down to, sixth in chips, you don't want to do that. So there's little compensations, but remember, it's the effective stack that counts. Let's go ahead and start here. You're in the small blind with 10 big blinds with ace-ace. What should you do? That is a call. It's only a call because you're trying to get the money in. You're basically playing jokers. You're in a small blind with 10 big blinds, 10-8 off. What should you do? Well, I don't want to reference the chart. I believe it's a limp. So let's look. Small blind, 10 big blinds, 10-8 off. Oh, maybe it's a fold. Yeah. Oh, no, it's an all-in. Look at that. It's an all-in. All right. Yeah. We're jamming the 10-8 off. It's close, though. I like these questions because he always puts them on the borderline. I think 10-9 off would have been too easy to get right. But 10-8 off is the dividing line. Because you can see 10-7, we're just limping. Small blind with 10 big blinds, 9-4 suited. Well, I think that's, honestly, I think it's probably is it a call? It's a call, right? 9-4 suited. Yeah, it's a call. Yeah. Cool. Next section. There's only 4 sections of this. I'd like to get through it today, but maybe not.
Now let's discuss when you are facing...
Okay. This is a longer section. So this is the facing it all in. This is a much longer section. I do have to get going in about 20 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and end it here. We're going to do this in 2 parts. We'll finish this section up tomorrow. And I'd like today to be a play day. I think I'm about 90% sure it's going to be. I'm not going to look at the schedule. I'm probably going to be back around 3 o'clock, maybe 3:30. And we'll just go from there. It's about 1 o'clock my time now. So about 2.5 hours. Thanks for coming out, guys. Really appreciate you being here. I don't think there's anybody... Yeah, there's a lot of people going ahead. So I'm not going to go ahead and stream. Tonka's on right now. Go watch him. And I'll see you guys later. Actually, how many people are here? Okay, there's a good number of people here. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys out to a host. I'll see you later. Have a great day. And